10 minutes before I opened my daughter's door, I could still hear her voice saying, "Dad's gone." But I wasn't gone. Not yet. And tonight, they'd learn why. I never thought I'd live long enough to see my own obituary, written by my daughter. It started 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, when I got a call from an old friend asking why my funeral service was scheduled for Sunday. I laughed it off, thinking it was a mistake. But when he sent me a link to the announcement on Facebook, my hands started shaking. There it was, my photo, my name, and the words, "Rest in peace, beloved father and homeowner. Passed away peacefully on November 10th. Peacefully. I was sitting in my kitchen, drinking black coffee and reading the morning paper. My name is Harold Jenkins. I'm 72, a retired high school teacher. My late wife, Linda, passed away 5 years ago, and our daughter, Emily, was all I had left. Or so I thought. She'd always been the ambitious type, first in her class, married into money, living in a house too big for her heart. But when Linda died, Emily suddenly became distant. Calls got shorter, visits rarer. Eventually, I became a burden in her eyes, a lonely old man in a creaky house that she saw as her inheritance waiting to happen. I remember her last visit vividly. She walked through the door with her husband, Evan, both dressed like they'd just come from a corporate meeting. No hugs, no warmth. Just that fake smile she used when she wanted something. "Dad, have you thought about moving to a retirement home?" she asked casually, sipping wine from my favorite glass. I told her no. That house was built with my own hands. Every brick carried memories of Linda, the laughter, the late-night talks, the garden she loved. I wasn't leaving. Emily just smiled tightly. "You're being stubborn again." Now, 2 months later, she'd declared me dead. At first, I thought about confronting her right away. But then I realized something. This wasn't just a lie, it was a plan. If people believed I was gone, she could take control of the property. She could sell it, transfer the deed, maybe even erase me from the records before anyone asked questions. That night, I sat in my dimly lit kitchen, looking at my reflection in the window. The man staring back at me wasn't angry. He was hurt, hollowed out. But there was also something else in his eyes. Resolve. I went through my old drawers, found a box of documents, property ownership papers, a copy of my will, and the letter Linda had written me before she passed. Her words came back to me like a whisper. "Don't let them forget who you are, Harold." The next morning, I called my lawyer, Mr. Peterson, an old student of mine who owed me more than a few favors. "Harold, you're supposed to be dead," he said half-jokingly when he picked up. "I'll die when I'm ready," I replied. "But before that happens, we need to make sure no one else buries me first." He laughed, then turned serious. "You've got proof of life, documents, and identity. We can freeze any property transfers and force an audit. But if you really want to make an impact, what? Show up where it hurts most. In person." That's when the idea hit me. Emily was hosting the annual Thanksgiving dinner. The one she'd told the family would be bittersweet without Dad. Perfect. So I waited. I didn't answer messages or calls. Let them believe their own lie. I watched as condolences poured into Emily's post, people saying what a good daughter she was for staying strong. The hypocrisy burned like acid. Finally, on Thanksgiving Day, I put on my old brown jacket, combed my silver hair, and took the bus to her neighborhood. The streets shimmered with orange leaves and cold sunlight, but my hands were trembling, not from the cold, but from everything I was about to face. When I reached her porch, I could hear laughter inside, the sound of wine glasses clinking. My grandson's voice, I hadn't heard it in months. "To Grandpa," someone said, and everyone cheered. That was my cue. I turned the doorknob and stepped inside. The room went dead silent. Emily's fork dropped from her hand. Evan froze mid-sentence. My grandson's face turned pale, and I smiled. Guess who's not dead? For a moment, nobody moved. The sound of the fireplace crackling was the only thing filling the room. I could almost hear Emily's heartbeat hammering against her ribs. Her face drained of color, her mouth slightly open like she was trying to form words, but couldn't. "Dad," she finally whispered, her voice trembling. You're supposed to be dead." I finished for her, closing the door behind me. "Yeah, I saw that online. Nice photo you chose, by the way. From Linda's memorial, wasn't it?" Her husband, Evan, stood up fast, trying to recover control of the situation. This is insane. You can't just walk in here, Harold. You're scaring the kids." I turned my eyes toward my grandson, Liam. He couldn't have been more than 12, his fork frozen halfway to his mouth. Am I scaring you, son? I asked softly. He shook his head, whispering, You're alive. That simple sentence broke the room's tension like glass. Emily looked ready to faint. Evan turned red, and the rest of the guests, Emily's friends, some distant cousins, even her in-laws, stared at me as if a ghost had walked in. Which, I suppose, was exactly what I was supposed to be. I stepped closer to the table. Don't worry, I said. I won't stay long. I just came to see my family. It's been what? A year since you last visited, Emily? She stood up, still pale, and tried to regain her composure. Dad, I can explain. Oh, I'm sure you can, I interrupted. You always could talk your way through things. Ever since you were little. Her eyes flickered with anger for the first time. You have no idea what's been going on. You left me no choice. No choice but to kill me off, I said, leaning slightly forward. You could have called. You could have asked for help. You could have told me the truth. But you decided to erase me instead. Evan stepped between us. All right, that's enough. You're clearly confused, Harold. Maybe you need help, medical help. I laughed quietly. Confused, am I? Funny, because the county records say otherwise. I went there yesterday. Checked the documents. Someone tried to transfer my property into a trust under your name, Evan. Care to explain that? He froze. His jaw tightened. Emily's eyes darted toward him, panic breaking through her mask. The guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. One of them whispered, Oh my God. I thought so, I said calmly. You see, when you teach high school for 40 years, you learn to read people. I can see guilt clearer than print on paper. Emily's voice cracked. Dad, please. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Evan said it was just a formality, that we could fix things later. Later. I echoed. Later. After I was buried for real? Liam suddenly stood up. Mom, why did you say Grandpa was gone? His voice trembled with confusion. Emily tried to reach for him, but he stepped back. You lied, he whispered. You lied to everyone. The silence that followed was unbearable. I turned to leave. You don't need to explain, I said quietly. Your actions already did. But as I reached the door, I felt something pull inside me. Not anger this time, but grief. Grief for the little girl who once ran to me crying after scraping her knee, who used to bring me drawings of us in the garden. That little girl was gone. I opened the door, but before I could step out, a small hand grabbed mine. Liam. His eyes were glassy, his voice soft. Grandpa, don't go. That stopped me cold. I knelt down beside him. You're a good boy, Liam. Don't ever lie like the adults do, all right? He nodded slowly. Emily burst into tears. Dad, please. I made a mistake, all right? I was desperate. The house, the taxes, Evan's business, everything was falling apart. I thought if I could take the deed, sell it, we could start fresh. I looked at her, feeling a strange mix of pity and disappointment, and bury me in the process. Her sobs filled the doorway. I didn't know what else to do. Then maybe, I said softly, you should have remembered who taught you to tell the truth. I turned and walked down the porch stairs, the cold air hitting my face like a slap. Each breath stung. Each step away from that house felt like walking out of my own life. But as I reached the end of the driveway, I stopped. I wasn't done. Not yet. Because forgiveness was something Linda had taught me. But justice, that was something life had taught me. And if Emily thought my appearance tonight was the end, she was about to learn what it meant to lose everything for real. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in my old armchair, staring at the clock as it ticked past midnight. The house felt colder than usual, emptier too. Linda's picture on the mantel watched me in silence, as if asking what I planned to do next. I'm not sure yet, I whispered to her photo. But they're not getting away with it. For most of my life, I believe that time heals everything. That patience and kindness can fix even the deepest wounds. But some wounds aren't meant to heal, they're meant to teach. When dawn came, I made myself strong coffee and called my lawyer again. Peterson sounded half excited, half nervous when he picked up. So, how did the grand entrance go? He asked. I gave a dry laugh. They looked like they'd seen a ghost. Well, technically they did. I told him everything. The fake obituary, the forged transfer, Emily's confession, Evan's guilt. He didn't interrupt once. When I finished, there was a long silence on the line. Harold, he finally said, you have enough to press charges. Fraud, falsifying legal documents, identity misuse. It's a big list. I don't want them in prison, I said quietly. Not yet. I want them to understand what they did. To feel what it's like to lose everything they took for granted. Peterson chuckled under his breath. You always did have a flair for lessons, even outside the classroom. He promised to help me gather the evidence, quietly. We filed a freeze request on the property's title and began preparing to expose the fake death notice. The legal part would take time, but I wasn't planning to sit still. That afternoon, I went downtown to the same cafe Emily used to work at during college. The owner, Martha, still remembered me. Well, if it isn't Mr. Jenkins. Lord, I saw your obituary. Gave me a heart attack. Seems like I'm good at those lately, I said with a smile. She poured me coffee on the house. I always knew Emily got a bit too fancy for her own good. What happened? Let's just say, I replied, stirring my cup. She forgot where she came from. Martha leaned closer. You planning something? I looked out the window at the busy street. A reminder, I said, for everyone who buried me too soon. Over the next few days, I started making calls, quiet ones. Old students, neighbors, people who still respected me. I didn't badmouth Emily. I didn't have to. The truth had its own way of spreading, especially in a small town. By Friday, whispers had started. People were talking about how I was alive and well, and how someone jumped the gun with that obituary. Local gossip was faster than the internet. Emily's perfect image of the devoted daughter began to crack. But I wasn't done yet. Peterson and I arranged a small press visit to my property, the dead man's house. A local reporter came to take photos and confirm the bizarre story of a man declared dead who wasn't. When the piece went live online, it exploded. The headline read, Local teacher rises from the dead after daughter declares him deceased. The comments were brutal. People asked how a daughter could do that. Some called it unthinkable greed. Others wrote, no family should betray a father like that. 2 days later, Evan tried to call me. I let it go to voicemail. His message was short and desperate. Harold, this has gone too far. Emily's losing her job. Reporters are calling. Please, can we meet? I didn't reply. Instead, I recorded every message, every apology, every word they said. Evidence, Peterson called it. Closure, I called it. That Sunday morning, I visited Linda's grave. The air was crisp, the sky gray. I laid down fresh lilies and brushed the fallen leaves away. You'd be disappointed, I told her softly. But don't worry, I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing it so they'll never hurt anyone again. I felt the wind shift, a small gust, almost like a sigh. Later that afternoon, I received a text from an unknown number. Dad, please. Can we talk? I can't take this anymore. Emily. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed. You buried me once, Emily. Now it's your turn to face what that feels like. And I didn't hit send. Not yet. Instead, I turned off my phone, walked to the window, and watched the world outside. For the first time in weeks, I felt calm. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was the living ghost she'd created, and I was going to haunt her with the truth until she begged for it to stop. The next step wasn't about exposing her. It was about redemption, if such a thing was even possible. And as fate would have it, she was the one who would give me the perfect chance. Because 2 days later, I received a formal invitation. From Emily. It read, Dad, please come to our house on Sunday. We want to make things right. I promise. I smiled bitterly and folded the paper. Oh, Emily, I whispered. You're finally ready to learn what honesty costs. Sunday came faster than I expected. All week, Emily's message sat on my kitchen table, folded neatly beside my morning coffee cup. I read it every day, half expecting her to send another. Something cruel, something defensive, but nothing came. Just silence. When I finally decided to go, I didn't tell Peterson. He would have called it a mistake. But this wasn't about lawyers anymore. It was about a father and a daughter standing at the edge of something broken, seeing whether anything human was left between them. As I walked down the street toward her house, the wind carried the smell of roasted turkey and cinnamon. The world around me was moving on, celebrating family, warmth, and forgiveness. I wondered what that word even meant anymore. Emily opened the door before I could knock. She looked smaller somehow. Her perfect posture was gone, her eyes swollen from crying, her once polished hair tied back carelessly. Dad, she whispered, her voice breaking. Thank you for coming. I didn't answer. I just stepped inside. The house felt different, quieter. The laughter that once filled it had turned into whispers and cautious footsteps. The guests were gone. Only Evan and Liam sat at the dining table, both tense and pale. "Can I get you something? Coffee? Tea?" she asked, wringing her hands. "I'll take the truth," I said flatly. Emily's chin trembled. "I know you hate me right now. And you should. I deserve that. But please, Dad, let me explain." I nodded once. "Go ahead." She took a deep breath. "After Mom died, everything fell apart. I tried to hold things together, for Liam, for Evan, for the life we built. But Evan's business went under, and we were drowning in debt. I was terrified, Dad. Terrified of losing everything." "So you decided to lose me instead?" Tears streamed down her cheeks. "Evan said if the house was transferred to us, we could sell it, pay off the loans, and start over. He told me it was just paperwork, that you'd never find out. I swear I didn't want to fake your death. It was his idea too." "Enough!" Evan snapped suddenly, slamming his hand on the table. "Stop acting like a victim, Emily. You went along with it. You even posted that obituary yourself." Her eyes widened. "I did it because you said you'd leave if I didn't." Liam flinched. "Mom, Dad." The tension shattered the fragile calm in the room. Evan stood up, pacing. "You think you're some kind of saint, Harold? You ruined everything by coming back. You were supposed to stay out of this." I rose slowly from my chair. "Stay out of my own life?" Evan's face turned red. "You're just an old man with a house full of memories. You should have given it up when you had the chance." For a moment, I saw the greed that had poisoned them both, the hunger that makes people forget who they are. But then I looked at Emily, and all I saw was regret. "You're right," I said softly to Evan. "I am old, but you made one mistake." "What's that?" he spat. "I taught hundreds of kids how to think, how to find the truth even when people lie to their faces. You forgot who taught her how to tell when someone's lying too." Emily's eyes widened as I turned to her. "You have a choice, Emily. Right now, tell me everything, every detail, or I'll let the world finish what it's already started." For a long moment, she just stood there, trembling. Then she collapsed into the chair, sobbing. "We forged the documents," she whispered. "Evan knew a notary who'd do it for cash. He said we could make it look like you'd signed them before you passed away." I didn't move. I just let her words fill the silence. "Where's the notary now?" I asked quietly. "Gone," she said. "Left town." Evan cursed under his breath. "You're not getting away with this, Harold. You think anyone will believe an old man over us?" I smiled faintly. "They already do. You should check the news." He blinked. "What?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the article headline, the one that had gone viral. "Father declared dead by family returns to expose inheritance fraud." Emily gasped. Evan's confidence vanished instantly. You told them?" "I didn't have to," I said. "Truth spreads faster than lies." He lunged toward me, but Emily screamed, "Stop," and grabbed his arm. "Enough, Evan. It's over." He froze, panting heavily, then shoved his chair back and stormed out the front door, slamming it so hard the glass rattled. For a while, there was only silence again. Then Emily looked up at me through her tears. "What happens now?" I sighed. "That depends on you." "I'll cooperate," she whispered. "I'll tell Peterson everything. I'll fix the papers, the accounts, everything. I just don't want to lose Liam." I nodded slowly. "Good. Because what you've lost already is hard enough to replace." She reached out, her fingers trembling. "Can you ever forgive me?" I looked at her, the daughter who'd buried me, the little girl who used to hold my hand in the garden. And for the first time, I saw both in the same person. "Forgiveness," I said softly, "isn't something you ask for. It's something you earn." I turned toward the door. As I stepped outside, the cold air hit my face again, and I finally breathed freely. Behind me, Emily broke down completely. Liam's sobs echoed faintly through the hall. And though my heart ached, there was peace in knowing one thing. She'd never forget this night. As I walked down the street, Peterson's words came back to me. "You always had a flair for lessons." He was right. This one just happened to be the hardest of my life. But it wasn't over yet. Because while Emily might have learned what guilt feels like, Evan was still out there, and he hadn't learned anything. 2 days after the dinner, the storm really began. Evan disappeared that night. No calls, no messages, nothing. Emily claimed she didn't know where he went, but I knew better. Men like him don't vanish out of guilt. They run because they're cornered. By Tuesday morning, Peterson had called me with an update. "Harold, you'll want to hear this," he said, voice low and tense. "Evan tried to liquidate your old property through a side firm in another state. He sent fake ownership documents again, but the freeze order we filed stopped it cold. So, he's still trying," I muttered. "Even after everything." "He's desperate," Peterson replied. "Desperation makes people sloppy. If you're ready, I think it's time to press forward." "Not yet," I said after a pause. "Not until Emily knows the full truth." That afternoon, I drove to her house. She looked exhausted, hollow eyes, unbrushed hair, wearing one of Evan's old sweatshirts like a ghost of her own life. "Liam was at school, thank God." "Dad?" she said quietly as she opened the door. "You shouldn't be here. Evan's furious. If he comes back, then let him," I said. "It's time someone taught him what happens when he steals from a teacher." She managed a small, broken laugh. "You always did know how to make a threat sound poetic." I followed her into the kitchen. The once pristine counters were covered in unpaid bills, eviction warnings, and half-empty coffee cups. Her life, the one built on appearances, was crumbling from the inside out. "I went through everything," she said. "The accounts, the loans, the paperwork. He's been lying to me too. The money he promised to use for the house, it's gone. All of it." I wasn't surprised. Evan was never the kind of man who lost by accident, only when the game ended. "Do you still love him?" I asked. She hesitated. "I love the man I thought he was. But now, I don't even recognize what's left." I nodded. "Good. Because what comes next, you'll have to choose which side you're on." She frowned. "What do you mean?" "Tomorrow," I said, "I'm going public. Peterson's submitting the full case to the authorities. Fraud, forgery, misrepresentation, all of it. Evan's name will be on every page." Her face went pale. "If he finds out, he already will. He'll see it the same time the reporters do." She shook her head, tears welling. "You're going to destroy him." "I'm not destroying him," I said firmly. "He did that himself. I'm just making sure he can't hurt you, or Liam, again." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing Linda's voice in my mind, the way she used to say, "People don't change, Harold. They just reveal themselves." Maybe she was right. The next morning, the article went live. "Family fraud scandal. Son-in-law charged in fake death scheme." The photos showed my old house, the obituary screenshots, even quotes from Peterson. My name was cleared completely. Evans wasn't. By noon, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Calls from reporters, neighbors, even old students who'd read the story. Some congratulated me. Some pitied me. But none of them knew the quiet satisfaction in my chest, the kind that comes when truth finally outruns lies. By evening, I got the message I'd been waiting for. From unknown number. "You ruined me, old man. This isn't over." I smiled. "Oh, Evan," I whispered. "It's been over since the night I walked through that door." A week passed before they found him. He'd been hiding in a motel 2 towns over, trying to sell what was left of his company's assets. The police picked him up quietly. No drama, no chase, just a tired man with no more tricks left to play. Emily came to see me that night. She stood at the doorway, her eyes red but her voice steady. "They took him," she said. "He's gone." I nodded. "It's for the best." "I told Peterson I'd testify," she said. "About everything. I don't care what happens to me." I studied her face, the guilt, the exhaustion, the faint trace of strength underneath. "That's what your mother would have wanted," I said softly. We sat together for a while, neither of us speaking. Outside, snow began to fall, soft and silent, covering the scars of autumn. "Dad," she whispered after a long pause, "I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want to earn the chance to try." I looked at her, my daughter, my betrayer, my blood. "Then start by remembering," I said. "Truth isn't supposed to make life easier. It's supposed to make it right." She nodded slowly, tears spilling down her cheeks. As she left, I turned back to the fireplace and stared into the flames. They flickered against Linda's photo, her smile frozen in time. "Looks like the lesson stuck after all," I said quietly. "Took a lifetime, but she finally learned." I leaned back in my chair, listening to the fire crackle. The house was silent now, not lonely, not haunted, just peaceful. For the first time in years, I felt like I could finally rest. Because revenge wasn't about anger anymore. It was about balance. About reminding the world, and myself, that even an old man can stand tall when truth is on his side. And as the snow piled up outside, I smiled faintly and whispered the words that ended it all. Class dismissed. The snow outside my window kept falling for 3 days straight, layering the world in silence. It felt poetic, the earth burying everything that had happened under something pure and white, as if trying to give me a second beginning. For the first time in a long time, I didn't wake up angry. I brewed coffee, fed the old tabby cat that liked to visit from next door, and sat by the kitchen window watching the sun rise over the frosted roofs. The world was quiet again. No phone calls, no reporters, no more lawyers. Just me, and this old house that somehow survived the storm. Peterson dropped by that afternoon. He looked pleased, carrying a folder full of papers. "It's done," he said, setting it down. Evans pleaded guilty. Emily's testimony sealed it. "You officially have your house, your name, and your peace back." I stared at the papers without touching them. "Peace," I repeated softly. Strange word, isn't it? Feels heavier than revenge. Peterson smiled. "You always did like lessons with irony." He left after a while, but not before saying, "You know, Harold, most people would have gone for blood. You didn't. You just wanted the truth to stand. That's rare these days." After he left, I walked through the house, room by room, touching the furniture, the photos, the walls Linda had painted years ago. So much life had happened here. Birthdays, late-night talks, laughter that used to echo in the kitchen. And for a moment, I realized how close I'd come to losing all of it. In the living room, I found an old box I hadn't opened in years. Inside were handwritten notes from my students, little thank you letters, old Christmas cards, even one from Emily when she was 12, to the best dad and teacher in the world. The edges were yellowed now, but the ink hadn't faded. I sat on the floor for a long time, holding that card, feeling something shift inside me. Maybe forgiveness wasn't about forgetting what people did. Maybe it was about remembering who they used to be, before life turned them bitter, before fear made them cruel. The doorbell rang just as I put the box away. When I opened it, Emily stood there, holding a covered tray. "Hi, Dad," she said softly. "I made something for you. Mom's recipe, chicken pot pie." For a second, I just looked at her. The snowflakes melted into her hair, her cheeks flushed red from the cold. She looked like a child again. Not the woman who'd betrayed me. Just my daughter, trying to come home. I stepped aside. "Come in before you freeze." She smiled faintly and walked inside, setting the tray on the table. The smell hit me instantly, buttery crust, thyme, that same warmth Linda used to fill the kitchen with. For a moment, time folded in on itself. We sat in silence for a while, just eating. I could see how hard she was trying not to cry. Finally, she said, "I'm selling everything, Dad. The house, the car. I want to pay back what I can. For what I did." I set down my fork. "You don't owe me money, Emily." She shook her head. "I owe you more than that. You lost your name, your dignity, your daughter." I leaned back, watching her carefully. "No," I said slowly. "I lost your honesty. But maybe it's coming back." Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." "Maybe not," I said gently. "But you do deserve the chance to become the kind of woman your mother believed you could be." She covered her mouth, sobbing quietly. I didn't move, just let her cry. The years of anger, shame, guilt, all of it pouring out in a single, trembling moment. When she finally spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. "Do you think Mom would forgive me?" I looked toward Linda's photo on the shelf. "She already has," I said. "You're her daughter. She never stopped loving you." Emily nodded slowly, wiping her tears. "I'll make it right, Dad. Somehow." We finished eating in silence. When she stood to leave, she turned at the door and said, "I'll come by next Sunday. Liam wants to see you." For the first time in years, I smiled without bitterness. "I'll be here." After she left, the house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt alive, like it had exhaled after holding its breath for too long. I went outside, brushing snow off the old porch railing. The cold air filled my lungs, sharp and clean. Across the yard, a neighbor waved. I waved back. For the first time, I didn't feel like a ghost haunting his own life. I felt human again. That night, as the fire crackled and the snow glowed softly through the window, I took out Linda's letter, the one she'd written before she passed. I'd read it 1,000 times, but tonight, the words felt different. "Don't let them forget who you are, Harold. But don't forget who they were either. Love has to survive even the worst of storms, or it wasn't real to begin with. I folded it carefully and placed it back in the box. Then I turned off the lights, sat by the window, and whispered to the quiet night. This house lived again, Linda. And so did I. The following Sunday morning arrived crisp and bright, sunlight glinting off the snow like tiny shards of glass. I woke earlier than usual, maybe from habit, or maybe because some part of me was nervous. It had been years since the house had heard the laughter of a child. Years since I'd set 2 plates on the kitchen table instead of 1. I brewed an extra pot of coffee, laid out the same old checkered tablecloth Linda had loved, and opened the curtains to let the light in. The place felt alive again, not grand, not loud, but awake. Around 10, I heard the crunch of tires on snow. My heart beat faster. When I opened the door, Emily stood there, bundled in a long coat, holding Liam's hand. He was taller now, shy but smiling. "Hey, Grandpa," he said quietly, his voice carrying that uncertain tone kids use when they're not sure if they're allowed to be happy. I knelt down and smiled. "Hey there, champ. You grew half a foot since I saw you last." He grinned, a small, genuine one that reminded me so much of Emily when she was his age. "Come in, both of you," I said, stepping aside. The warmth of the house met them like a soft embrace. Emily looked around, taking in every familiar corner, the photographs, the worn sofa, the creaky old floorboards. "It hasn't changed a bit," she murmured. "Some things aren't meant to," I replied. Liam ran toward the fireplace, where Linda's photo sat framed above the mantel. He tilted his head curiously. "That's Grandma, right?" "Yes," I said softly. "That's her. She's pretty," he said simply. Then, after a pause, "Mom says she was kind." I looked at Emily, who was standing near the window, her hands clasped tightly. For a second, she looked like a little girl again, nervous, trying to make up for something she broke. "She was the kindest person I ever knew," I said. "And she'd be proud to see you both here." We sat down for lunch. I'd made beef stew, my one reliable dish. The smell filled the kitchen, earthy and warm. Liam talked about school, about how he wanted to play baseball in the spring. His excitement spilled over like sunlight through the window, and I found myself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in what felt like years. Emily smiled quietly the whole time, watching us. When we finished eating, Liam wandered off to explore, leaving me and Emily at the table. She toyed with her mug, eyes distant. "He still doesn't know the whole story," she said softly. "About what I did." "He doesn't need to," I said. "Not now. Let him remember you as a mother who made mistakes and fixed them." Tears welled in her eyes. "I'm trying, Dad. Every day. I go to therapy, I work extra shifts, I'm saving money. It's not much, but I want to build something honest this time." I nodded. "That's what matters." She hesitated, then reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope. "There's something I need to show you." Inside was a check, not a large one, but the amount was meaningful. "It's from the house sale," she said. "The one I bought with Evan. I wanted to give you what's left. It feels wrong to keep it." I looked at the check, then pushed it back gently. "Emily, money can't fix this. You can't buy forgiveness." Her lip trembled. "Then what can I do?" "Live better," I said simply. "Raise that boy right. Teach him the truth, even when it hurts. That'll be worth more than any check." She nodded slowly, tears falling silently down her cheeks. "I will." The afternoon sunlight shifted, pouring through the window in a warm golden hue. Liam came running back into the kitchen, holding a small wooden birdhouse I'd built years ago with his grandmother. "Can we hang this outside, Grandpa?" I smiled. "Of course." The 3 of us went out to the garden, the same one Linda used to tend with her hands in the dirt and a song on her lips. The snow was melting, patches of green starting to peek through. I helped Liam hammer the nail into the fence while Emily held it steady. The birdhouse wobbled slightly, but when we stepped back, it stood firm. "It's perfect," Liam said proudly. "Not quite," I said, smiling, "but close enough." Emily looked at me and laughed softly through her tears. It was the first time I'd heard that sound in years, fragile but real. As the sun began to set, I watched them leave. Emily turned at the car door and met my eyes. "Thank you, Dad," she said, "for still letting us be part of your life." I nodded, feeling that quiet warmth again. "You always were, Emily. You just had to find your way back." When their car disappeared down the street, I went back inside and sat by the fire. The house felt fuller now, not from noise, but from presence, from something deeper. For so long, I thought revenge would give me peace. But watching that little boy smile, hearing my daughter's laughter again, that was the real justice. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't making them suffer. It's showing them that you can still love, even after they tried to destroy you. I looked up at Linda's picture and whispered, "You were right, my love." The family came back. The fire crackled softly in response, and for the first time, I didn't feel like the last man standing in a broken story. I felt like a man who had finally learned how to start again. It was late that night when the thought first came to me, that there were still words left unsaid. Not to Emily, not to Evan, not even to Liam. To Linda. For months, her photograph had sat quietly on the mantel, watching every rise and fall, every storm and silence that passed through this house. I'd talked to her 100 times in my head, but tonight felt different. Tonight, I needed her to hear me, even if the only place my words could reach her was somewhere between the firelight and memory. So I sat down at the kitchen table, the same one where we'd once shared breakfast every Sunday, and pulled out a sheet of paper. My hand trembled slightly as I began to write. Dear Linda, I don't know if words can still find their way to where you are. But if they can, I hope this letter reaches you in the same quiet way your voice still reaches me. When the wind brushes the curtains, when the old floorboards creak, when the morning light hits the kitchen window just right. It's been 5 years since you left. The house hasn't changed much, still full of the same stubborn furniture you loved, still humming with the smell of coffee and dust and old wood. But I have changed. I think you'd recognize the face, but not the man behind it. You'd be disappointed if I told you how dark things got after you were gone. How Emily drifted away. How her ambition turned into something sharp and cold. How I let her distance become a wound instead of a warning. I thought I could fix it the way I fixed broken desks in my classroom or leaky pipes in the basement. But family isn't something you fix with your hands. It's something you hold with your heart, and I let go too soon. Then came the betrayal. You probably saw it before I did. Maybe you tried to whisper it to me in those sleepless nights when I felt something heavy pressing on my chest. Emily's lies, Evan's greed, it all happened so fast that I didn't even have time to be angry. I just felt empty. I found out they'd declared me dead, Linda, my own daughter. My name carved into an obituary I never wrote. I thought that would kill me for real. But something in me, something I think you planted, refused to die. You always told me, Harold, people don't lose their way. They just stop looking for home. Maybe that's what I became, a man still walking home through the dark. I wanted revenge at first. I wanted her to hurt the way I did. I wanted to see her beg, to hear the truth scrape out of her throat like broken glass. But when I saw her that night, trembling, terrified, eyes filled with the kind of shame only a child can feel, something inside me cracked. I realized revenge wouldn't bring me peace. It would just bury me again, this time for real. So I chose truth instead. And truth did what revenge never could. It brought her back. Slowly, painfully, but surely. She's trying, Linda. Our girl is trying. She sold everything, came clean, and started again. I saw her cry like she did when she was little, not out of guilt, but out of hope. She's raising Liam with kindness, the way you would have wanted. And that boy, he has your smile. Your eyes, too. When he laughs, the whole house feels alive again. I think you'd like him. Sometimes I catch myself imagining you sitting across from me, rolling your eyes when I burn the toast, laughing when I talk to the cat like he's a person. You'd say I'm getting soft, that I've turned into one of those sentimental old teachers who can't let go of the past. And you'd be right. But maybe that's not such a bad thing. Maybe the past isn't something we're meant to let go of. Maybe it's something we're meant to learn from. That's what this house has taught me. That's what your absence has taught me. You used to say our home had a soul, that every creak, every beam, every patch of light carried the memory of who we were. I never believed that until now. Because after everything, when I thought this place was nothing but an empty shell, it came alive again. Emily came home. Liam's laughter echoed through these walls. And for the first time since you left, I felt you here again, not as a memory, but as presence. I think that's what forgiveness really means. It's not forgetting what they did. It's remembering why you still love them anyway. So, my love, I'm writing this not to say goodbye, but to tell you something I should have said a long time ago. I forgive her, and I forgive myself. The past is no longer a ghost in this house. It's part of the story, the part that teaches, not haunts. I'll keep the fire burning for a while longer, just in case you decide to visit. You always like the sound of the flames at night. Until then, I'll see you in the little things, the smell of cinnamon, the flicker of light on the snow, the laughter of our grandson. Love always. Harold. When I finished, I folded the letter carefully and slipped it into Linda's old recipe book, the one she used every Sunday. She would have smiled at that. Then I went outside, the cold air sharp against my skin. The sky was clear, full of stars. I looked up, feeling something warm spread through me. Not grief, not even peace. Something deeper. Maybe she heard me. Maybe she always had. For the first time since she died, I didn't feel like I was talking to the dead. I felt like I was being heard. And as I walked back inside, I knew one thing for certain. The story wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about resurrection. The house had lived again, and so had the man inside it. By February, the snow began to thin. It didn't melt all at once. It softened slowly, quietly, as though even the earth itself was exhaling after holding its breath too long. The trees were still bare, but I could see tiny buds forming on their branches, small promises of spring. I'd been keeping myself busy, fixing creaky steps, repainting the porch railing, organizing the garage. There was something healing about restoring old things. Maybe because I understood what it felt like to be one. Every morning, I still made 2 cups of coffee. One for me, one for Linda. Old habits died gently, not hard. I'd sit by the window, sip the warm bitterness, and listen to the faint crackle of the fireplace. Sometimes, I'd catch myself smiling at nothing in particular. A memory, a scent, a sound from years ago. Life had found its rhythm again. Not perfect, not full, but steady. One Thursday morning, a letter arrived in the mail. Not an email, not a message, an honest-to-God handwritten letter. My name written in neat cursive, familiar yet careful. Inside, I found Emily's words. Dear Dad, I don't know if I deserve to write to you yet, but I wanted you to know, I'm getting better. Liam's grades are up. He joined the baseball team like he always wanted, and we talk about you all the time. He says you're the bravest man in the world. I'm working full-time now at the community center. It's not glamorous, but it feels good. Real. Sometimes, I still wake up feeling like I'm trapped in that lie, the one I built to hide my shame. But then I think about what you told me. That truth makes life harder, but right. Thank you for giving me the chance to live right again. Love, Emily. I read it 3 times before I realized my hands were trembling. Not from sadness, but from pride. She was doing it, building something honest, piece by piece. I placed the letter beside Linda's photo and whispered, looks like she finally learned. That weekend, Emily called. Dad, Liam's got his first baseball game Saturday. Would you want to come? I chuckled softly. You really think I'd miss that? Saturday came with a sky so blue it almost hurt to look at. The baseball field was small, tucked behind the high school. Parents lined the bleachers, clapping and shouting encouragement. I stood quietly at the edge of the fence, hands in my coat pockets, watching Liam jog onto the field in his bright red uniform. He saw me from a distance and waved so hard his hat nearly flew off. That alone was worth every heartbreak I'd ever lived through. Emily joined me a moment later, breath visible in the cold air. He's been talking about this all week, she said. He wanted to hit a home run for you. I smiled. He doesn't have to. He already won. The game started. The crack of the bat, the cheers, the calls of run, run. All of it felt like music. At one point, I caught Emily watching me, her eyes full of something I hadn't seen in years, peace. When Liam finally made his first solid hit, she gasped and grabbed my arm. He did it, she cried. I laughed so hard tears blurred my vision. After the game, Liam came running toward us, face flushed with pride. Did you see that, Grandpa? I hit it so far. I sure did, I said, kneeling down to his level. You hit it straight into spring. He tilted his head. What do you mean? I smiled. You'll understand one day. Emily chuckled quietly beside me, shaking her head. You and your metaphors. It's a teacher's curse, I said. We stood there for a while, the 3 of us, watching the other kids pack up. For the first time, there was no shadow of the past between us. Only sunlight, laughter, and something that felt dangerously close to happiness. On the drive home, Emily dropped me off at my house. Before I got out, she said, Dad, I've been thinking, maybe we could start doing Sunday dinners again? Like before. I looked at her, really looked. The years of guilt and regret were still there, but they'd softened into wisdom. "I'd like that," I said. She smiled, eyes glistening. So would Mom. When I stepped inside, the smell of the old house wrapped around me like an old coat. I hung up my jacket and sat by the window, watching the last of the snow melt under the afternoon sun. Linda's photo caught the light just right, and for a moment, I could almost imagine her standing there, apron on, that knowing smile playing at the corners of her lips. "See," I whispered. "Winter's finally over." Outside, drops of melted snow tapped against the window pane, steady and rhythmic, like a heartbeat returning to life. I closed my eyes and let the sound fill the room. Not silence, not loneliness, just life, in its quiet, stubborn, beautiful form. The long winter was ending, and for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of what came next. Because revenge had ended in forgiveness. Loss had turned into lesson, and a house that once held ghosts now held family again. Spring arrived with the sound of rain tapping against the porch roof and birds calling from the oaks by the fence. The air was softer now, the kind that carried the smell of wet earth and the faint promise of lilacs. The snow had finally vanished, not melted away in a rush, but slowly, like it knew it had overstayed its welcome. I woke up earlier than usual that morning. The world outside my window looked fresh, washed clean, like life had pressed a reset button. The garden was still a mess, soggy soil, empty flower beds, but it felt alive again. Linda would have been out there already, sleeves rolled up, humming while planting the first seeds. I made my coffee, poured a second cup out of habit, and carried them both to the porch. "Morning, Linda," I said quietly. "You'd like this weather. It smells like something new." The breeze rustled through the budding branches, and for a second, I could almost hear her laugh again. Around noon, the knock came. I wasn't expecting anyone. Peterson usually called ahead, and Emily never came without a message. The sound startled me, gentle but certain, like someone who knew they belonged at my door. When I opened it, I froze. A young woman stood there, maybe late 20s. She had a warm, nervous smile and eyes that looked oddly familiar, kind, steady, searching. She held a small paper folder against her chest. "Mr. Jenkins?" she asked. Her voice trembled slightly. "Yes," I said, confused. "Do I know you?" She smiled. "Not directly. My name's Claire. My mother was one of your students. Back in 2001, I think. Mrs. Nolan. She told me you used to help her study after school because she couldn't afford tutoring." I blinked, memories flooding back. A shy girl with freckles, always sitting in the front row, terrified of algebra, but full of determination. "Yes," I said slowly. "I remember her. She wanted to be a nurse." Claire nodded, smiling wider. "She became one. She passed away last year. I found your name in one of her old notebooks, next to something she'd written. It said, 'He believed in me before I did.'" I felt something shift in my chest, soft and painful all at once. "She used to tell me about you," Claire continued. "About how you stayed after class when everyone else left, how you told her that smart doesn't mean loud, it means curious. She said you changed her life." I didn't know what to say. My throat tightened as I tried to find words, but all that came out was, "She did that herself." I just reminded her she could. Claire reached into the folder and pulled out a photograph, her mother, in a nurse's uniform, smiling with a newborn in her arms. "That's me," she said softly. "And this is for you." She handed me a letter, carefully folded, edges yellowed with time. "Dear Mr. Jenkins, if you're reading this, it means I never got to tell you thank you. You taught me more than formulas and history. You taught me what kindness looks like when no one's watching. I hope I lived a life that would have made you proud. With love, Laura Nolan." My eyes blurred halfway through the letter. I pressed it to my chest, unable to speak. Claire smiled gently. "I just wanted you to know that she never forgot you. None of your students did. My mom used to say that a teacher never really dies. They just live on in the lives they helped build." The wind shifted, carrying the scent of rain and blooming soil. I swallowed hard and managed a shaky smile. "Thank you," I said. "You didn't have to come all this way." "I did," she replied softly, "because I think people deserve to know when they've made the world a little better." She waved goodbye and walked down the path, her figure disappearing into the misty afternoon. I stood there long after she'd gone, the letter trembling slightly in my hand. Inside, The house felt warmer than before, fuller somehow. I placed Laura's letter next to Linda's photo, beside Emily's and Liam's pictures. 3 generations, 3 different kinds of love, all tangled together through time, pain, and forgiveness. I sat down in my chair by the window and watched the garden as the rain began again, steady and gentle. Tiny green shoots poked through the soil, the first signs of spring. That's when I realized this wasn't just a season. It was a second chance. Everything I thought I'd lost, family, purpose, love, had come back to me, not in the way I expected, but in the way life always delivers, quietly, truthfully, in its own time. I smiled to myself, whispering the words that had been on my tongue since that first morning of snow so many months ago. Some winters end slowly, but they always end. Outside, the rain eased, and a single ray of sunlight broke through the clouds, landing right on Linda's photograph. And in that golden light, for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. I felt whole.